Our opinions on everything E3, thoughts on virtual reality, and a fair bit of hair chat. This is Staying In. Yeah, I've had a haircut.
How much?
That's basically the most exciting thing to happen this week. It was £12. I can thoroughly recommend Stephen Shepherd, a hairdresser in Bristol.
Would he consider himself to be a hairdresser or a barber?
I think he would consider himself a hairdresser, actually. He's fantastic. He makes it into an art form, to be perfectly honest with you. Certainly with my hair. He's very good. So if you're in Bristol, thoroughly recommend...
getting your haircut.
When you guys come, getting your haircut. When you guys come down, we'll have to all go on a nice little haircutting session.
What artwork are we talking, Pete? German Expressionism. Hey.
When I was at school, there was a kid who came into class, and I went to a very posh grammar school. Very posh, all-boys grammar school, which was very, very tight and very strict, and didn't really like self-expression. And this one kid who was always...
It all makes so much sense now.
I know. That's why you're repressed and weird. This one kid who was a bit of a troublemaker, he came into school one day, and he had this cap on, and everyone was like, why has he got this cap on? And then he had to take his cap off for the morning assembly of all 500-600 kids that went to this school. He took his cap off because a teacher asked him, and there was a big Nike tick in the back of his head.
Oh, yes.
You can't buy class.
You can't buy class, and he certainly found that out. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Lovely.
Back in the days when buying, you wanted as many stripes as you possibly could on your Reeboks.
I seem to remember have seen pictures of you, Pete, with bleached hair. Did I make that up?
Yeah, no, I used to have bleached white hair, and I thought I looked pretty good with it. And I think actually it would suit my new hairstyle.
You also used to have long floppy hair.
Yeah, I also used to have long floppy hair. Yeah, we've all had long floppy hair.
No. Well, to be fair, compared to you two, Kris, you just had big hair.
I look like a spaniel.
Pete's very much was floppy hair.
Mine was floppy hair, actually. Wasn't
I would refer to it as flopsy. Actually.
Yeah, flopsy. Yeah, no, I went into the barbers and said, could you give me flopsy? Well, the point is I didn't go to a barber's. So I think we can all agree that the most exciting thing to come out of E3 was Spider-Man. So I guess we can just kind of finish this conversation right here and then go home. I'm going to have some tea in a minute. And so Spider-Man, right? So this is coming out of Insomniac, who made Sunset Overdrive and Ratchet and Clank, and
Spyro.
I mean, they've been like Spyro. They've been like a PlayStation mainstay for a really long time. Then they went multi-platform. They seem to get character action, which is exactly what Spider-Man and all superheroes are. So what I loved about this trailer is clearly there was stuff going on there that looked like it was sort of gameplay, like it was kind of in-game, and it looked like the gameplay was going to be really dynamic. Like previous Spider-Man games have been very much focused on, let's see if you can traverse the environment, and you see the character shoot the webbing up into invisible areas of sky, and you generally just sort of swing through the towns, and there's not a lot of interaction or engagement with any of the buildings or objects or the things around it, and it definitely has felt in the past like it's a mechanic to travel to places to do some fighting, whereas in this new one it looks much more dynamic. There's a moment in the Spider-Man trailer where you seem to leap a huge distance, and then he shoots his webbing on something, swings on something, and then he focuses on an enemy and does this sort of drill down, fast-paced kick towards an enemy, and it's like from miles away. And it reminded me a lot of infamous First Light, which I basically saw that and went, Sucker Punch really does need to make a Spider-Man game. And it looks like Insomniac also had that thought and went, actually, let's us do that. As like a Spider-Man fan, to see that character's costume, to see it look as if it's, because I've seen the trailer for the Avengers or the Captain America movie where Spider-Man's in it looks like that. It makes me excited for where Spider-Man might potentially be going in the future in terms of the films, but it makes me really excited about the game because it looks like somebody actually might make finally a really fantastic Spider-Man game. And yeah, that's why it's the best trailer of E3.
I mean,
See, I put together a list of everything, and I realised a lot of stuff got announced, much more so when I kind of looked at the big long list. And I have to say, Spider-Man didn't really make much of an impact for me. I know you're.
When did you have the stroke, Dan?
Funny. I know you are a huge Spider-Man fan, so I'm aware of that, and I that may be swaying your view ever so slightly. But okay. I look at a Spider-Man game, and I would like it to be good, but I can't help look at it with the trepidation of knowing the games have come before it and the problems those games have had, and you still have to.
But Dan, it's got Insomniac behind it. It's not Activision anymore.
It's got Insomniac behind it, and I would completely agree with you, except for they've done 4 very good Batman games.
Hang on. But the reason why, obviously. Yeah, but the reason why, yeah, because Rocksteady's the same. Because,
but the point is, character action and superheroes can work.
But my problem with the Spider-Man franchise as a game is, I think it's very difficult to make the whole swinging through a city work in an action-oriented thing. And obviously, as you say, they did it with, obviously not Insomniac, but Rocksteady did it with Batman, and they made the gliding aspect, which you could probably make comparisons with, an intricate and really good part of the game. However, I'm trepidatious about Spider-Man because such a big part of the game is something that I'm not entirely sure works as
I've always said
in
you're
a game
pessimist,
environment.
Dan. Okay, so I've always said you're a pessimist, Dan. Did you guys actually stay up and watch E3, or did you check out the trailers afterwards? Because this year, right? So last year I stayed up and I was like, hanging out, like playing it, like watching the Xbox One. I thought, oh, this is fantastic, blah blah blah. And this year I just went, you know what? I can't be bothered with all that. I don't like the snark. I don't like the sarcasm. What I want is just a big list of YouTube videos, and I'll just watch them at my own pace. Like, this looks interesting. This looks interesting. This doesn't. So did you guys stay up, or?
Well, I didn't stay up, but the way I worked it was, if I was up and around when a conference was on, I would kind of watch it live streamed. But what I do for most of them is I kind of binged watch them all on YouTube, and it enabled me that if a segment is going on too long, for example, Bethesda showing Dishonored for 20 minutes, I can skip ahead and say, they're still talking about it, still talking about it, 15 minutes, still talking about it. And if I'm getting bored, it enables me to skip past it and see what else is coming up.
It's really useful for the Electronic Arts ones as well, because you're like, Madden, no,
I have
don't care,
no interest in Madden. I'm sure Madden is a fantastic game, but I have no interest in it.
Which is, absolutely, like, it's just not our cup of tea. Chris?
E3's been a funny one this year because it seems to become more divided each year and fragmented. Like last year, it wasn't clear as to who won E3. It was kind of a shared thing between Microsoft and Sony. This year, I think Sony won it. I think personally, but it seems like it is slowly kind of fragmenting. Like lots of companies are starting to do their own thing in the shadow of E3 or preempting E3, for example. Lots of stuff is being leaked beforehand, so the magic of it is being lost somewhat. So.
And also, let's put that word leaked in inverted commas.
Yeah, exactly. A very high quality leakages they were as well.
Yeah.
I think if you looked at in past years, it has very much felt like you've had one space that on a Monday, Sony's there. On a Tuesday, Microsoft's there. On a Wednesday, Nintendo is there. Whereas now, it just kind of feels like they're all just deciding to do big events at the same time, as opposed to we're all in this together. This is one big thing, a big event that we're all getting together. Obviously, it is. But the fact is, they're all in different places. None of them are kind of connected to each other in any way. Some of them are repeating some of the content as well. So you're not getting... So, for example, when in Microsoft, the trailer for Battlefield 1 cropped up again, I'm kind of like, well, I've already watched this for ages with EA. I'm kind of like, I don't need to watch any more of this, but you're showing me this again. And it was like they are, as you say, kind of very segregated. I mean, if you look, you can find, I think, on YouTube the very first E3. And it's amazing because it's just a group of guys in one room with like a PowerPoint presentation with like the most basic of graphics. It's amazing to see where it's come to. And then it's kind of like literally like graphs with arrows saying, this is going up. Sales are good.
It was back in the day when I was like, I guess reading magazines, like, and well, we all were like, that was when there was always the joke of like, and this is the portion of the show that you're interested in, i.e. here's the fun gameplay. I mean, Sony apparently used to be really bad for this. They used to have loads of graphs, and it was all just for shareholders. And apparently they just do that in a separate event now. It's like way before. Like they just go, here's the shareholder event. Like, we're not going to talk about any of this other stuff. Here's the graphs going up. Aren't we all happy and dandy? I definitely feel E3's changed. Like they've like stuff leaked early. I think it's generally starting to morph a little bit. It's become a consumer show now. Like you can actually get consumer tickets now, either for this one or for the one coming next year.
I think over the years you've seen an increase. Well, I've noticed more of an increase in kind of the people who are at E3. You're getting more of the yelpers, the guys that scream and shout when Spider-Man's announced.
And you're like, so when I used to do the journalism thing, I used to get really annoyed at that. I used to get really, really annoyed at people like cosplaying and like I was at E3 and wandering along, and there was a guy in a Mario costume interviewing one of the like Nintendo people. And I was like, fella, like, you've got to at least have the vague appearance of objectivity. And it has become more of that. And obviously those shows, Gamescom's always catered to consumers. TGS has done it as well. And I think E3 is going to open up even further to be even more of a consumer event. And they need to, because, big companies want to reach out to communities and their players directly. They don't want to necessarily go through press and stuff like that. So now, okay, so obviously you're wrong about the Spider-Man stuff, but what's at the top of your list of like this was the star game?
Ooh, that's a difficult question.
It is a difficult question.
I don't mean to be a downer, because I think there's a lot of good stuff that's got announced.
Yeah.
But for me, there hasn't been something that literally kind of went, wow, this is amazing. I haven't had the moment when I saw the first ever trailer for The Last of Us, or I haven't had the moment last year, I think it was last year, with the Microsoft, where they had the HoloLens, where they showed Minecraft on the HoloLens, and you're kind of like, this is incredible. Perhaps maybe some of the VR stuff. I think one thing that stood out, I remember when I saw Resident Evil 7.
Oh yeah,
the trailer for that. I thought, firstly, before that reveal, you're like, this is scary as crap. This is what VR is going to do so well, and it was really scary. And I mean, you had a combination of it working in terms of there's a moment where someone walks past a doorway, and in the conference you heard people in the crowd scream because it jumped them. Yeah. In the same sense, in that same video, he also looks around and sees some kind of mannequins of some women without clothes on, as people started wolf whistling. So, some bits are good, some bits are bad.
Yeah,
but as I was watching that, you're kind of like, this is scary, this is how it works. And then when it came with Resident Evil, I was like, wow, they're really going back and making Resident Evil scary again. And that's what this series needed.
Like the series has they've become very fun action games, but they've become much less scary than they.
It's an action game now. It is no longer scary.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Kris, but like I feel like Resident Evil 7, the fact that they hint at they use the word ghosts, they hint at there's not really zombie stuff. There's this first person thing. You're creeping around, like it feels very Silent Hill almost.
I was about to say that. It completely smacked off the now discontinued Silent Hills PT, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It felt like almost emulating it or homaging it somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, does that make you? Because I know you're not a massive like Resident Evil fan or anything like that, but like, does this make you interested in Resident Evil again, or is the fact that it's the seventh? Well, there's more than 7 games, but the seventh sequel, or whatever. Like, does that sort of put you off?
Well, I've only ever really experienced Resident Evil watching other people play it. So, for example, Resident Evil 4, for example, I remember that the famous for its kind of the over-the-shoulder perspective that it had, and that was a complete breath of fresh air, I think, in the universe. And one thing I've noticed from Resident Evil, looking at it from an outsider, is that it's very good at reinventing itself.
Yeah,
I mean, look at what we saw now compared to the last few iteration of games, and you wouldn't even think, as Dan says, I wouldn't have known this was a Resident Evil trailer until I saw the title slapped on the end of it. Really. VR, are we convinced by it? Because it's been a bit of a VR fest this year. We kind of always assumed it would be at this E3.
Everyone at E3 seems to think this is going to be the big thing.
Yeah.
I have to say, I was very, very sceptical about VR for a long time. I was kind of like, it's just not going to work. My feeling always with VR was you can't move around. You can't walk forward in the game and walk forward kind of naturally. Because
it depends what you're using, but yeah.
But think how many miles you'd cover, Dan.
Just imagine Skyrim.
Yeah, true.
But I a couple of months ago, probably longer than that, I tried out the Oculus Rift for the first time. So I tried out that, and it was just the demos of it. So it wasn't a game or anything like that. It was just demos of kind of showing you how it would work. And just from a very brief experience of that, I could straight away imagine myself just sitting on the sofa with the controller in my hand, fully engaged with it. And I knew then, once I'd experienced just some demos, and the demos were things like I'm standing on a beach and the sea's coming in, and then as I look down, the sea kind of washes over where my feet would be, and I flinched because my feet are going to get wet. That kind of, it did that within straight away putting it on, I had that feeling. And so I firmly believe that VR is going to work. I think there is not. It's still got a long way to go, because with this kind of technology, it is brand new, and obviously Oculus Rift has been doing it for a long time now. That's been around for a long time. That's kind of, that technology has been developed for a long time. But I think this is going to be the main first iterations, especially something like PlayStation VR and kind of all the other different areas. I'm not convinced it's going to come out the bat kind of with a top of the range kind of this is as good as it can be, but I think that's definitely the future. And some of the games that I've seen are interesting. I'm not sold on particularly many of them, but they are interesting. I
definitely feel like PlayStation VR was the really big push at E3. Like there was talk about Vive and in Microsoft conference, they were talking about the Xbox Project Scorpio, which again, that's on my list. Like they were talking about how that's going to be VR capable, like it's going to be VR ready and all that sort of stuff. So there was talk about it, but it really felt like it was Sony that was pushing PSVR. And you've also got to think, at the moment, PSVR represents the cheapest avenue into PlayStation, into VR, and it's going to be out for Christmas. Like, clearly, this is the E3 where they go, right, guess what? You're going to be interested in this next big consumer product. Because this is going to be the first year where a large portion of the VR HMDs are actually available to you to purchase from a consumer standpoint. Like, Oculus has been dev-only, really. Vive has only just come out. It's been out for a couple of months now, but it's prohibitively expensive for most people. And PSVR really is that first commercially available VR experience. And so you saw it with, you saw this VR stuff with Resident Evil 7, Batman.
Rocksteady. That we thought they'd done with the Batman universe. What is their involvement with this?
It definitely Rocksteady?
Well, it said Rocksteady at the end of the trailer, yeah.
So yeah, sure. So is it Rocksteady as in like
Batman Arkham Origins?
That's clearly not working on Batman anymore, or is it?
Have you heard about what the demo that they were showing of actually that one was?
No.
Yeah, it's literally just like you stood in the room, you can look at like batarangs, and you can. It's very, very.
Yeah, I think there is.
Condensed.
My understanding there's two kind of demos. One of them is basically you putting on the kind of the outfit and you putting on the cowl and being in the Batcave and being able to kind of explore that, which I know for some people
that would
like
be enough
Kris,
for me. Yeah.
That would be a dream. But
yeah.
the other side of it is they were kind of saying that because of the nature of VR, bringing in the combat would be very difficult. So they're focusing more on the investigative side of Batman. So he's investigating a kind of a crime scene and being able to walk through like a 3D hologram of what happened, so you can walk in and investigate and pick up clues and spot that there's a witness there or something like that. So that's kind of interesting. But as I say, I don't know how far that would stretch to a full game.
I must admit, I don't know if I could sit through Rocksteady's combat in VR. I'd probably throw up.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the games that I'm super excited about, like really jazzed about, we knew about Final Fantasy 15 long before E3, but I'm really genuinely excited about it. It's the first Final Fantasy that's made me genuinely sit up and pay attention and go, oh wow, this is really new. Except for, side note, Final Fantasy 12, which has just, and I don't think it was at E3, but it was outside of E3, they've just announced that Final Fantasy 12 is getting an HD remake and it's going on to PS4, which I am so excited about. But Final Fantasy 15 has a VR mode in it as well. And again, it's that thing of, okay, so Resident Evil 7 has a VR mode. There's a Batman game that's going to have some VR in it. There is Final Fantasy 15 is going to have an element of VR, which from what we can see so far, it's really quite limited, but it seems interesting enough. There was a whole bunch of these VR demos and so forth that I've no particular interest in. And yeah, like it definitely felt like Sony was saying, yes, be excited about PlayStation 4, be excited about, Neo potentially, where we might be going next. Be excited for all of that stuff, but really, guys, like, we've got this great slate of games, and also this VR stuff. This is what you want. This is your big Christmas present this year. This is what you want to ask your mum and dad for. Like, you want to go and look in these big established franchises that we know you like. And if you'll notice, like, a lot of that stuff was like 15 rated stuff. Like, clearly they are going for that very much hardcore consumer of like, and love these franchises. We're going to make you a whole bunch of VR experiences within them, and by the way, we're also going to try and start up these other potentially new franchises that also deal with VR.
For me, as we said there, we thought the idea of someone winning E3. If Sony did, I think the presentation that they put on was amazing. Having that live orchestra, it felt... One thing I always dislike about E3 is it usually feels quite immature.
Yeah.
And very flashy and just bright lights and colourful. The fact that we're in a kind of a theatre, there was a live orchestra who was playing the music, accompanying the gameplay that they are showing, I was like, this is amazing. And this is grown up. This is looking at games in a grown up way and saying, look, we're doing good stuff here, and let's show it to you in the best possible way.
I do love the idea of you buying like a special edition of the game. You get given a cellist who sits there with you in the living room and plays along with you.
But Dan, I think that's a really interesting point. Since games began, we've been having this thing of, now games have grown up. But really, this year, a lot of the games felt as if they had not grown up but matured. It felt like a lot of the characters were not straight white dudes with grizzled beards and shaved heads, although obviously there were still a whole bunch of that. It felt like there were people of colour, there were women leads, shock horror. Like, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of visual style that was outside of hyper-realism, which I was really worried that going into the PlayStation 4 era we would just constantly keep going down these, like, the gritty, grisly Gears of War style, which has its own place, that realistic, grizzled kind of stuff. But a lot of the games, felt colourful and as if they were experimenting with the art style and stuff like that. And to further go on about the maturity, and one of the games that actually genuinely surprised me as to how excited I was about it was Detroit.
Yes, this is what I want to talk about.
I'm along with that as well.
I was worried. I was going to get laughed at for mentioning Quantic Dream.
But here's the thing, right? So, Quantic Dream, Fahrenheit,
Heavy Rain.
Heavy Rain.
Beyond Two
they
Souls.
also did Beyond Two Souls, but they also did the joint with David Bowie, Nomad Soul. Like, they've done a whole bunch of different games, and they've all kind of been along the same thought process. They've been about making decisions. They've been about, here is a linear narrative, and by the way, you can change where the story goes at this point. Now, I don't know, for me, Kris, like, the thing that made me most excited about Detroit was it felt like this isn't a story in which you have choices. This is a whole bunch of choices which will make your story. Like, so
yeah, I'd agree.
So the trailer is about an android who is who is basically a negotiator and is going to negotiate with another android that has gone rogue and taken a human being, a girl, captive. And the goodie, let's say, seems to be the star of the show. Although we don't know with David Cage games. And the characterization, the personalization of the characterization of that character, the performance was just absolutely fantastic. You really felt like this was uncanny.
Yeah,
like it looking at them, you felt like there's something that's not quite right about this person. But it was the focus on the trailer of, hey, there are so many decisions and outcomes. Like, you can go straight into this thing, walk straight past all the evidence and go and have this conversation with somebody, and you've completely screwed up the entire thing. Or you can hang back and find a bunch of evidence, or grab a gun and put it in your pocket. But all of these decisions have further decisions for you to make. And it looks like the actual narrative branching tree is massive for this thing. And it makes me think that if that's the concept, maybe, and like, obviously I've been burned a couple of times on this, but maybe this is David Cage's chance. Maybe this is the opportunity for him to finally realise what it is that he started with Nomad Soul.
It's got a bit of a Blade Runner feel to it, which originally, when I saw the earlier kind of announcement trailers for it, I was kind of put off a little bit by it, but I quite liked the procedural drama. Like, one of my favourite bits of Heavy Rain was that cop who had that kind of augmented reality kind of glasses that enabled him to kind of solve crimes, and there's kind of echoes of that there. And there's also, we've come to see with games such as Until Dawn, the enjoyment one can get from these kind of multi-arced narratives that kind of splinter off and branch off into a host of possible different universes. And with next generation consoles such as the PS4, those possibilities are only going to kind of exponentially increase. Well, I went to Ikea yesterday and I bought myself a chair and a rug, and I've discovered a really quite interesting game to play, and it's to try and find the piece. You know how Ikea, it's Scandinavian, and they have some very interesting names for products, and I thought it'd be quite interesting if I could find a product closest to my name.
Right, okay.
And I'm surprised this has never caught on before, actually, because I think it's a genius thing. So, like, Pete, for example, do you want to know what you're the closest object?
I like this game already. I take back my cynicism.
Pete, if you were an object, like a household object, sold in IKEA, what would you be, do you think?
Okay. I think I would be a lamp. Bright, tall, straight-laced, proud, helpful.
Plugged in, switched on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all of those things. So what am I, Kris?
You're a rug.
Right.
Yes.
A very nice rug.
Because we walk all over you.
Is it called the Peter?
No, it's the closest I get to your name was the Persisk.
Right, okay.
That's the closest I get to your name.
Right. Okay, what about Dan?
Dan, what do you think Dan is?
I think Dan would be a towel rail.
Interesting.
Heated or...
Yeah, no, definitely heated. Yeah.
I'm a luxury item.
Yeah, one of those luxury items. Yeah, exactly. A luxury. You don't necessarily need a heated towel rail, but
it's always good to have me around.
It's great to have one. When you get out the shower and you, I've just remembered that my towel's going to be warm. Great.
You got to make an effort to get me around, but if I'm around, you never regret it.
Well, Dan, unfortunately, you're a little bit more practical than that. You are, in fact, Dan, a disco ball with LED lighting.
Yes.
Called the Dancer. The Dancer.
The Dancer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Chris, what were you?
I was a. I'm glad you asked. I am a free-armed chandelier called the Kris Staller.
For me, as I say, I don't think there was a standout moment, but when I looked through, I was like, actually, there is a lot of stuff that's been released. I mean, whilst we might just cover off a couple of other things I just wanted to note from the PlayStation conference. I really like the cover you kind of alluded to with talking about female kind of protagonist. Horizon Zero Dawn. I thought that looked really interesting with the kind of the mechanical dinosaur creatures and that. I think that premise. I really like the idea of the premise, and then just kind of wait and see how that progresses. Obviously, your friend and ours, Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled about.
But that's not a Crash Bandicoot game, is it? It's
it's
the
1, 2, and Warped remastered.
Is it true?
Oh.
That's what I mean. Yeah, like that's what I was just going to check. Like the 1 and 2 are being remastered. They're remastering
Crash Bandicoot 1, Crash Bandicoot 2, and Crash Bandicoot Warped are being remastered. But they showed Crash Bandicoot appearing in Skylanders Imaginators.
That's interesting. So is the phrasing remaster or is the phrasing redoing? Like, are they doing a Ratchet and Clank with this, or are they just HDing it up? Because if they
I
HD
believe
it up,
the
I'm
word
not
he
excited.
used was building it from the ground up.
I'm about to say, because
Okay,
Naughty
right.
Dog do not no longer own the rights to Crash Bandicoot, so there must be kind of complications there. How do you remaster a title that you didn't actually?
Yeah, it's Activision, I think, who have the rights to that.
Anyway, it seems a bit of a. I mean, Crash Bandicoot currently resides on a mobile platform, doesn't he? If memory serves me correct, he kind of.
He's just a character mascot. He's in absolutely everything. Like there's a whole bunch of different genres and stuff that different companies have tried to do stuff with him. Like Vivendi used to own the license. They did some terrible Crash Bandicoot on Xbox. I guess my big issue, right, with quote unquote remastering Crash Bandicoot, you can remaster Ratchet and Clank because that is still a 3D character action exploration platforming game. If you remaster the gameplay beat for beat of Crash Bandicoot 1, 2 and 3, that is a very linear 3D game. Like, you are walking down a hallway, basically.
Yeah, but and also
I get.
They cut so many corners in order to try and use the maximum amount of pixels and potential of the PlayStation. This is a PS1 title, but Ratchet & Clank was a PS2 title, which is a little less of a leap than going back.
It really is. It really is.
I think a good example of it, I think, of what I imagine it to be, is the same thing that we had with Oddworld New and Tasty from Oddworld's Abe's Odyssey. That's how I see it. Possibly that leap. Obviously, Abe's Odyssey was a PS1 game. It held on to the core mechanics of the game and the core storyline, and
which was still good.
Which was still good. But I mean, I don't mind. I think Crash Bandicoot can be tough. I played Crash Bandicoot 1 not too long ago, only a couple of years ago. I replayed it, and I loved that game. There are a few times when it gets really difficult, and some of the mechanics don't quite work as they would have hoped, but I still think it's a great game, and so I'm really excited about it. I can see myself purchasing a trilogy of Crash Bandicoots again, because I think more than anything else they are great platformers, and I love a good platformer. The return of Hideo Kojima and his new title Death Stranding.
What
thought the
does
trailer
that title mean?
I think I've worked it
Stranding?
out. I think I've worked it out because
Right.
I looked because when it came up, Death Stranding. First thing I thought was, hang on a minute, that's not a word. Stranding isn't a word. However, it turns out it is.
Okay.
And when I did a bit of research, because that's right, I do research. There's a kind of a thing called cetacean stranding, and that's where basically beached whales. That's the terminology is called. I'm probably mispronouncing it, but Settlesea and Stranding is where they are stranded on the beach. So
Okay.
I took when you kind of extrapolate that, Death Stranding, in my estimation, I'm suggesting that maybe this game takes place perhaps in like an afterlife, a purgatory. So Death Stranding is death washes up kind of thing. The idea of that.
Right.
That's how I interpreted it from looking at that. I mean, in the title you have it's very very Kojima trailer. Lots of stylized symbolism. You even if you didn't know he was involved, you
figures
say,
hanging
yes,
in the
that's
air.
him. It's clearly got huge nods to kind of environmental issues.
Yeah.
And having the child who disappears and
There's a lot of metaphysics and philosophy at play.
it's very
this is
much
classic.
very much big narrative. It's you're
Yeah.
not big picture stuff. You're not talking about a linear structure here. Everything's a metaphor for something else.
And he's
as
also-
we've come to know and love from Kojima games, there's always something behind all the decisions he makes. I'm really interested in it, mainly because it's going to be different. It's not going to
Yes.
be like anything else we've seen before, good or bad. We have the same thing with David Cage. It's not going to be anything we've seen before. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Some decisions that Kojima has made in the past, we've kind of laughed at and said, no, that's stupid. Other things have been like, that's amazing. I'm excited for it.
I also like the fact he's recycled Norman Reedus from Silent Hill's playable teaser.
What are your thoughts on it?
I'm still, part of me subconsciously thinks that the title Metal Gear Solid 6 will be hidden in the title of it if we go back and look at it.
Oh man, the whole PR spin and stuff like that. I just can't trust Kojima anymore. I just can't, and it's great because it means it's exciting. Like, it makes me think about Death Stranding. It makes me go, okay, well, if you look at the logo for this game, it's a helmet with a skull inside of it, and again that makes you start thinking about, okay, well, it looks a little bit like some of the design from the Naked Snake and Venom Snake era Metal Gear stuff. But also coming into this Death Stranding idea, there's a lot of metaphor about death, a lot of metaphor about like rebirth, and obviously Kojima's just gone through this metaphorical rebirth. He's moving away from Konami. There's there was a fantastic photo posted by Norman Reedus. I don't really follow him, but on his Instagram,
I saw this.
There's a picture of Hideo Kojima drinking from a mug, and on the mug is the word Konami tears. Like, it is, I mean, like, either this is the greatest augmented reality game, and long con, like, or this is a really fascinating peek behind the curtains of what that relationship was. And apparently this game might be using Fox Engine. Like, and again, I'm playing through Phantom Pain at the moment. Like, definitely that is an engine that seems like it can be heavily expanded and adapted to do different interesting things. As you say, Dan, like, Death Stranding, whatever it turns into is going to be an interesting discussion. It might not be a great game, but it's certainly going to have us talking for ages.
Primarily, we're all we've all owned kind of Xboxes in the past. At the moment, we all own the PS4. None of us currently own kind of a Microsoft console. And so, was there anything in kind of the Microsoft conference that made you think that this might be a console that I want to perhaps invest in?
The Xbox One S looks beautiful.
Looks fantastic. I can't wait to find out what the Xbox One 2 is, what Project Scorpio is. But one of the things that really surprised me this year was, obviously there's these really interesting, fascinating, Death Stranding and that kind of stuff. Games that have grown up and matured and that sort of thing. But one of the games that really, really got me excited was Forza Horizon 3. And so I haven't had much experience with Forza, but I played the Forza Fast and Furious advert game that they gave away on the 360. It was like a free downloadable to support a Fast and Furious movie. And I rinsed it. Like, it was like 5 hours of content, and I absolutely rinsed it clean. And I just thought, this is very exciting driving action games. And I thought, I'd be really excited about that. And then when Forza Horizon 2 was really kicking off, or it was just after Forza Horizon 2 came out, really, that this Fast and Furious game came out. But I was like, I've kind of missed the boat on that one. Okay, fine. And we'd all decided, well, collectively, we pretty much always have these discussions of, okay, are we going to get a PS4 or are we going to get an Xbox One? Because obviously we all want to play together. And so Forza Horizon 2 was out, and I was like, well, I'm not going to get an Xbox One just to play Forza Horizon 2. Forza Horizon 3, watching the trailers for that, I'm really tempted by an Xbox One. Like, much more so than Gran Turismo. Like, Gran Turismo looks fine, it looks great. Like, simulation racing.
And that's interesting, because I know you're a huge Gran Turismo fan.
Yeah, I love Gran Turismo, but Forza Horizon 3 just looks... It looks exciting. Like, it looks like... It makes me excited about driving games, and that's what... Recently, obviously I've played lots of very clever intellectual games, but recently I just want games to thrill me. And Horizon 3 just looks out of this world.
I think the cooperative nature looks really interesting. And I didn't quite really understand how it was all working together. I think you'd have to sit down and see, because it seemed as though kind of halfway through a race, your friends join your race, but they're in different cars and they're driving in from different places, and it all seemed a little bit confusing. For me, I mean, I'm someone who very much prefers racing games, arcadey racing games. I really enjoyed in the past kind of the Need for Speed games, the kind of Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. I think we played before, and that was really good fun. That's the kind of game that I've played. I remember, I think it was Gran Turismo 5 that I bought. Because I bought it on your recommendation, because you were like, this is amazing. And it just, I'm sure to some people that is amazing, but for that simulation aspect, I'm like, no, I'm not getting it.
Yeah.
I got stuck. There was a level where you drive around the Top Gear track in a camper van, and if you nudge anyone at any point, there's like 30 camper vans. If you nudge anyone, you lose.
The problem with simulation racing games on console, or previously, the problems with them have been things like where they've gone like, hey, here's the Top Gear track, and isn't this hilarious? Like, here's a camper van, yeah, we're having a lovely time. But don't drive into anybody. Don't have fun. Like, make sure that you do this very cleanly and very quickly. Like, and whereas Forza Horizon 3 is a bit more like, yeah, stick the back end out, who cares? Have a fun time.
And that's what I want from a driving game.
Yeah, definitely.
And from a driving instructor.
And from a driving instructor. So I think this year, like, my big purchase is going to be a PSVR, but I can totally see me grabbing next year, or whenever it is that the Xbox One 2, whatever the Project Scorpio thing actually is, when that drops, I can absolutely see myself grabbing one. Like,
by then, by then the catalogue of games will be there. Not only in ones that are coming out now, but the kind of the back catalogue that's been out since it came out. There's always been games on there that I've liked the look of, but it's not been enough for me to purchase. I mean, I like the Halo franchise, so I would enjoy.
And I think it's the exclusive games. Like, most games go out on absolutely everything, and the idea of console bias is completely ridiculous, because now you can pretty much get everything. But it's those exclusives that you buy those consoles for. And yeah, I genuinely, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I genuinely feel like an action-based arcadey driving game, it might very well push me to buy an entire console. Because
there isn't anything similar, is there, from the Sony platform?
There's really not, and I'm absolutely jonesing for a little bit of that. Now, if Sam was here, he'd be saying Steep.
Steep interests me. The idea of an open world game crossed with a snowboarding game just sounds interesting.
Sounds great, right?
Yeah, I don't know how it would work, and I don't really know how that whole process would work, but it sounds interesting.
I think if we want to see where that game's going, I think we can look at stuff like Skate. And the Skate series, I harp on about it to anybody who will listen, which are very few people, but Sam and I would hang out while I was living in my old apartment and single and stuff like that. We would hang out in Skate 2 and a little bit of Skate 1 And then when Skate 3 came out, yes, it was great. We would hang out and we would session the same rail in an open world skateboarding game for hours. Like we just session the one location. Him and I coming at the same rail from different angles, you know, trying out different tricks, trying to outdo one another, trying to do silly things to impress one another and be a bit silly with it. And it was great. And Steep looks to be a continuation of that, but in terms of snowboarding. Now, I think they've obviously I'm happy that Ubisoft has actually shown Steep, because I think it looks great. I think they might have shown it a little bit early, because that game looked unpolished.
Yeah.
It looked like it had about another year or so of development time at least. But the core idea of invite all of your mates into a party, hang out together, do different activities together, rewind through your own play, dare each other to do different tricks and runs, and you can do snowboarding and skiing and wingsuit and who knows what else that they'll chuck into it, and hang out online. And it becomes then a multiplayer hub. It doesn't become a competitive thing. It becomes we're going to hang out and just chill and play Steep for a whole bunch of time, like Sam and I did with Skate. It's a great opportunity to just hang out and chat and talk to one another, and talk about the news of the day, but giving your hands and your a fun little part of your mind something to do while you're doing that. And I was really impressed with it. I think it looks like it's got a great deal of potential, which is also the thing that I thought when I played the original Watch Dogs. And now that I see Watch Dogs 2, I think that I'm vindicated in my in my assumption. Like, the original Watch Dogs felt like there was the potential for a really interesting game there, and then it just never quite really capitalised on it. It was fine. It was like a 7 out of 10 or whatever, and I enjoyed it.
Would you compare that to, and I don't mean this to get a rise out of you, but would you compare that to, say, like the first Assassin's Creed?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no,
because I think that was a very similar thing of the crux of an idea was there, but the kind of the polish wasn't enough in order to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think it is that exact same thing. I think this second shot at Watch Dogs. First of all, I think Ubisoft knows that it's kind of make or break for this series now. Like, they've built it up and they've spent a bunch of time and money marketing the thing and getting an audience that gives a toss. They sort of delivered on some of the stuff in the original Watch Dogs, but not all of it. It's a very stylish game. It's really got its own sense of identity, even if the characters don't, or at least the lead. It looks like it's going to try and tell a bit of a mature story set in the future, but it's a realistic-ish future. Like, it's about underground hacking and sort of social unrest. And Watch Dogs 2 looks like it's going to do all of that and just turn up the volume and be like, yep, okay, so you want social unrest? Here's you running through a crowded city and you're using your little hacking device to turn off this and use this electronic remote over here to open this door, and then here's a remote control car that you've nicked off somebody else to go and explode this other thing over here, and you've got to do it all in really quick time. It sounds great.
I am actually really interested, and what interests me is, now I don't know if they mentioned it, so maybe you'll fill me in if they did. Did they mention anything about kind of it playing cooperatively? Because I know I think in some of the leaks that was happening before, kind of these weren't really leaks; they were kind of released images around Watch Dogs 2. There were showing kind of four different characters, and it's very much seen through the advertising. There was an implication that there was a kind of a 4-person team that you could play as, and I've seen kind of some articles which I think alluded to that. And I think if there is a way some of the articles I read, it alludes to the idea of being able to go through the narrative, maybe not hitting all of the narrative points, but being able to go through it cooperatively. And if that's the case, I'm very interested in it. Because a 4-player co-op in that kind of environment, with those kind of abilities and that kind of game structure, I find very interesting.
So we know it's got co-op. We don't know how many necessarily. We don't know how much. But I'm with you. Like, if this is a co-op game throughout the entire single player experience, like, yeah, absolutely count me in. This sounds like madness. Like, the ability to interact and hack different objects, in groups of one another and like sequence up things like together. I think that's it just sounds.
Oh yes. I wanted to get onto this Dishonored too. I haven't watched the huge uber long gameplay footage. I've just seen snippets of it, and there's nothing really anything new except upgraded graphics. But it's got the kind of things I loved so much about Dishonored. Not just the kind of gameplay, but the whole, I suppose, mise en scène of the game, the look and feel of it is just something that I find very inviting for a first-person shooter, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I think that's the game I'm definitely going to purchase, I think, from E3. To be honest, I already knew I was going to purchase it before E3 anyway, if I'm honest. But speaking of first-person shooters, what do we think of the BioShock rip-off, We Happy Few?
The rip-off?
Well, it's not really a rip-off, but it's kind of, maybe it's a homage, whether it's kind of...
This is one of the games that I saw, didn't check the trailer out for, and I'm kicking myself now. I've only watched a little bit of it. So what is We Happy Few? Because this has been completely off my radar, and it's only just come onto it.
It's like a picture. Okay, it's set during, I believe, the swinging 60s. Forgive my ignorance if I've got that fact wrong. In a time where people are, it's your traditional kind of narrative, in the sense of dystopic. There's an authority there that are trying to stifle any form of expression or rebellion. So the way they keep the masses down or at bay is by just drugging them essentially with these happy pills. And when you take these happy pills, the world is very colourful and 60s-ish, lava lamps and all that jazz. And if you don't take your pills, you see reality for what it is.
So this is like Soma from
Brave
New World?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Is it Brave New World? Soma?
No, I'll have to check.
Or 1984? One of them.
Yeah. But it's kind of got this very quite creepy, kind of grotesque aesthetic where the guards and authority wear these kind of like quite grotesque clown masks. So there's something like completely unnerving about it throughout, and you're kind of flitting between the reality and this kind of happy place, and it's really unsettling. And it kind of culminates. Basically, you're in this room and you're in this office by your desk, and you have to decide whether you want to take your dosage of happy pills or not. And anyway, in the gameplay, you choose not to, and you just basically lob them on the floor. And then one of your colleagues walks in with this kind of like grotesque, kind of clown-esque kind of mask, saying, "Oh, we've got so and so's birthday to celebrate. You should come here." And she looks on the floor and says, "Oh, you've not taken your happy pills. Do you want to have mine?" You're like, "Oh, no, I'll take them."
They're referred to as your joy.
Your joy, that's it, fantastic.
Your
joy,
okay.
Joy pills.
So it is quite a creepy kind of
it is
phrase when you hear it. Have you taken your joy?
Yeah.
Like,
and because it's English, have you taken your joy? That kind of like Village of the Damned, Children of the Corn, Village of the Damned kind of creepy English accent. So you leave the room and you walk along the corridors and you witness quite disturbing things through windows. People being attacked by smiling clown-like people dressed as policemen. It's really creepy. And
then kind of force-feeding them their joy.
Like forcing the pills down them. And you get into this room, and there are people there. It's in the party, but like a really forced party where people are just manically whacking this piñata in the centre. And you're like, okay, that's weird. And they're like, oh yeah, piñata, it's a great tradition. Oh yes, we've inherited this tradition. It's a lovely, lovely tradition. They're hitting this piñata thing. And then the drugs that you'd previously taken are starting to wear off your joy, and you realise that actually it's only when you look at your hands, because you picked up the candy. I think you picked up the candy, but suddenly your hands are just red, and you look down and it's not a piñata, this brightly coloured piñata you saw. The drugs are worn off. They're just hitting a rat, and they're eating the entrails of it. And then they suddenly all turn on you saying, "You've not taken your joy." And the alarms and the klaxons go off, and you're being chased by these policemen with these kind of fixed, grimacing kind of clown smiles. It's really grotesque. But it has
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I know, but it has this kind of like BioShock aesthetic, which feels strangely you feel strangely quite comfortable with it. Because you're familiar with that kind of mechanic. You're familiar with that kind of world. Whether it has the kind of groundbreaking philosophical edge that BioShock had, I don't know. You couldn't get that come across. But in terms of aesthetics and gameplay, it is like, the BioShock we kind of want that isn't going to arrive. So this is the best we've got, really.
I think it's a smaller game than what BioShock was. Because it did, in terms of the Microsoft conference, it did fall under the kind of the ID at Xbox. So that's the independent developers. So it was very much an indie game. But I completely agree with everything Kris said. It's got that feeling, and you do feel strangely comfortable because even though you're not underwater, you haven't got that music. That feeling is very much there. In terms of your surroundings, you're in an enclosed space. Clearly, you're in kind of you're locked down somewhere, which links very much into how BioShock, that kind of claustrophobic feel that you had with BioShock, you get that as well here. I watched it, and that was probably one of my highlights. Just in the fact of it was really weirdly creepy and kind of absolutely kind of just gets under your skin. And that, as Kris, you say, that moment when you hit the piñata and then you look down and you suddenly, the veil has been lifted and you now know what this game actually is. That everything you've seen so far in the game has been a mirage. You don't know all the stuff you've seen. Actually, what was it? I don't really know anymore. And so I'm interested. I mean, obviously, because it's ID at Xbox, I'm imagining this will be an Xbox exclusive, so this wouldn't be a game I'd be able to play for a while. But if I did kind of invest at any time in kind of a new Microsoft platform, that would be definitely something I'd be looking to play. It's
Compulsion Games who've developed it, and it's an Xbox exclusive with PC as well, so it's Microsoft really. The only other game I think they've done prior to that is a game called Contrast, which came out in 2013.
Oh, okay. Yes, now I'm really interested then. Okay,
yeah.
Good.
So it's the same company, Peter, did that. So
cool.
Yeah, I think actually having this conversation, there's some good stuff here actually. E3 2016.
There was some good stuff, wasn't there? Obviously, we're not talked about absolutely everything, but there was some really interesting stuff, and it makes me E3 always gives me the boost that I need, right? Like, every once in a while you get really down on games. You think to yourself, it's just all sequels, or it's all going the way of free-to-play monetization but paid. Like, it's all dreary first-person shooters. It's all... Nobody's got any brand new ideas about, all this sort of stuff. Another Call of Duty. But you realise actually that, first of all of those games are actually totally great. Like, you get excited by those things. Like, I'm excited for sequels. Forza Horizon 3 looks great. Watch Dogs 2 looks interesting. Like,
I like the look of Call of Duty Infinite Warfare.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought that looked really good.
The point I'm getting to is E3 is always this shot in the arm for me, because there's always a good selection of games. It always reminds me of why I like video games. And this year has been no exception. It's said, here is a medium that is still maturing, still has amazing things to do, lots of stories to tell, and it's all coming really soon. Like, it's all, next year, or it's all this year. It's all on its way. And yeah, it always gets me jazzed again for video games, just when I need that little boost.
Yeah, I think, as I've said, the only thing that this E3 didn't have for me was the one title that suddenly went straight to the top of my wanted list. It's not dislodged the games that are up there. Nothing here. What it hasn't is given me a number of games that, you know what, yeah, I might play that when it comes out. I'm interested now that I wouldn't have been before. Games like God of War, I've never been interested in God of War. However, the kind of what was shown, I was kind of like, actually, that looks interesting. That looks like something that I might enjoy.
I would like to follow the story of a god raising a baby.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
With a lovely beard.
That beard is pretty mighty, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of beards. A lot of beards in games at the moment. I wonder why. Maybe I'll grow a beard. Anyway. I think that's about it, isn't it?
Well, talking about your beards, I think that kills anything, yeah. Have you ever had a beard, Pete?
Yeah, I've had a beard.
Have I seen you with a beard?
I had beard when I had flopsy hair.
Oh gosh, yeah, when we did the play together, we all had to grow beards.
Big old beard.
Yeah,
I had to shave it eventually, because obviously we did it for the roles and stuff. But I had to shave it eventually because I found a bit of sandwich in there.
like a whole triangle, like a bread.
Yeah, that's right. So, I'll eat that later. That was Staying In with Kris, Darby, Dan Frost and me, Peter Willington. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit stayingin.podbean.com for more information and links to the things we've talked about in this episode. And come find us on Twitter on @StayingInPod. Thanks for listening.